What's going on, guys? This is Jordan here, back again with another video, and boy does it feel good to say that. I'm currently sitting here with, the Black Lives Matter hoodie because today I want to talk to you guys about what it's been like, what's my experience been like as a black male studying at the University of Bristol, and yeah, I think, I don't know, now is kind of an important time to talk about this. I feel like it's always been a big issue, being a black person, but I feel like now is especially significant because we lie between two quite important, in future it's going to be quite historic, milestones, I guess, or like anniversaries, where we have the tragic passing, or shall I say tragic murder of George Floyd back in the US and America last year, and then sometime afterwards, which we're approaching the next anniversary of the toppling of the Colston statue in Bristol. And I think myself, I've always talked about racism, not racism, I've talked about Bristol a lot, I've talked about my experiences a lot, failing, taking a year engineering at Bristol. But one comment that I think I get more than any other comment is like, what's the diversity like, the equality like, what's it like for international students, black students, South Asian students? And I've never actually talked about it at length, mostly because I didn't really see the point of just giving my own individual experiences. I feel like anecdotal evidence doesn't really mean much in the big picture. We have about 20,000 students here, and it's a bit disingenuous if I just talk about just me. Even though you're kind of asking for just me, I just didn't really want to perpetuate, my own ideals of what the university is like. So I thought, let me wait until I have more qualitative data and I can speak from more reference points. And then suddenly I woke up today and it's hit me like, I don't even need to wait to find data. The data exists. So shout out to Shantae, Aisha and Hannah, who put out this report. This must have been 4 years ago, I think, back when Shantae was still studying here, when they were the heads, the chairs of the BME network. Aisha and Shantae did incredible work there. Hannah was our ELA, which is the Equality Liberation Access Officer, I believe. She was also, there were three, well, Aisha was actually South Asian, I believe. The other Shantae and Hannah were black. But anyway, I'm not on a tangent. And they all got together, they got support from the university, from the SU, and did this analysis, I guess, this data. They put a report out. They did all the research regarding ethnic minority students in the University of Bristol. And this report has been out literally since 2017, 2018, 2016, whatever, that time frame. And yeah, I just never did anything with it. If you do want to read the whole report, I will put a link down below in the description for you to check out. And also for this merch, this is Black Lives Matter. This is from artist named Nobody. I'll also put the link down below in the description for her merch. I don't know if this exact hoodie is still available, but check out her store nonetheless. She has a lot of great stuff, and it's definitely worth checking out. But yeah, let's finally get into this video. Now, what's it like for me and for other ethnic minority students studying at Bristol? So I guess before we get into this, I want to put an important note in this. Like, I mean, it's not really about the report itself. It's more about a personal thing. I'm a numbers person. I'm a data person. I like understanding. But this light is ruining my everything. So I like seeing numerical data. The methodology for this report was essentially quite qualitative. Was purely, shall I say, qualitative. They have they surveyed a couple hundred students. They had focus groups for 2 focus groups with about 14 students each, I believe, from having read the report. And then at the end, they had a bunch of students who were like walking around campus and taking pictures of like significant things that on their day-to-day, kind of like keeping a diary of their experience, again, as an ethnic minority student in Bristol. And while I think that's incredible, it's all great work. Me personally, as I said, I like numbers and data and analytics and things that I can interpret numerically. That's just me as a maths guy. That's personal to me. However, this report, as I said, is very, very qualitative, which is good because it shows you your actual thoughts, what it's actually like as an individual. You can contextualize this from a personal perspective instead of just saying like 55% less likely to this. Like, what does it actually mean for me, versus someone actually giving you an actual day in the life, perspective. So yeah, this is going to be a very qualitative. It's going to be very anecdotal, which is great. I just want you guys to know that off the bat. If I don't, if you think what I'm saying is dumb, that's because I'm a numbers guy. I don't necessarily follow this the same way I think most people, most rational people will follow this better than me. So again, I actually think it's good if you actually go through it at the same time as me, following the link in the description below. But yeah, let's get it. So we are going to get into this now. I've taken a bunch of notes down, but what I want to mention, literally just before I go into it, is that these like things have improved. It's not it's not this bad still. Maybe it is because you've been online. I haven't really felt as as different in public around campus, because there is no campus this year really. But things have changed. The Bristol University have put a lot of money and effort and emphasis into improving this attainment gap. Generally, I think we are better than all the other Russell Group unis anyway. So yeah, bear that in mind as we go through it. But yeah, it's quite interesting data here that we're gonna talk about. So first of all, Bristol is one of the worst, according to this report, one of the worst Russell Group unis in terms of the number of home UK black students that make it into this university. They don't actually have a number here, which I would have appreciated. Again, I'm a numbers person. But yeah, they said that Bristol's the worst, and then having read through this report, they kind of highlight a bunch of different issues, structural issues, for example, the complaints process and behaviour, policy and things like that. They reference organizational issues, like how like a lot of the staff are white. When you go to counselling or the wellbeing services, you're kind of often met by a white male. And a lot of this is something that I've noticed. I haven't really cared as much. I feel like it's a bigger issue for other black students. I appreciate the problem. I have noticed it. I haven't really felt that bad. I spoke to a counsellor, just like a middle-aged old white lady. I guess it's because my issues weren't specific to race. I mean, no problem really is, I guess. But I had things with like people passing away, which is something you kind of relate to anyway. But I appreciate, again, like it is a bit jarring, I guess, when you go into this room and you just see a bunch of people that have no idea what you're going through. I think I mentioned something that was somewhat, not controversial, but somewhat race-based. And she's just like, oh, maybe you're overreacting. I'm just like, mate, yeah, whatever. Whatever. So whatever. It is a real issue that exists. That's a thing. There's also financial issues, how expensive it might be to do these things. Attitudinal problems as well, like lack of understanding, maybe presenting like a lack of urgency. So this report mentions a lot of different issues. I kind of put it into those four. But they also talk about different themes to do with like isolation, mental health, having to code switch and adapt to uncomfortable situations, dealing with microaggressions. So there's a lot going on here. I think that when this report states that if you're a black and ethnic minority student, a BME graduate, is 15.2% less likely to achieve a first or 2-1 in comparison to white classmates. And I think that's crazy. I think that's compared to 20% of BME students who achieve a first class versus 31% of white students who achieve a first versus 20% of college students. So there's literally an 11 percentage point gap there. That may not necessarily mean as much. I mean, it's ironic. I said I'm a numbers person, now I'm getting actual numbers. But when you actually look into those statistics, you appreciate that there are far more white people on campus than there are black people anyways, and other ethnic minority groups. And not to mention the classism differences there. Like a lot of BME students are working class versus a lot of white students who are like upper class, went to private schools. So generally there are differences between our groups of people. It's not necessarily fair to look just at that number and say, wow, you're 50% more likely to get a first as a white student. Like, yeah, the data would suggest that based on 2015-16 statistics, but it's also worth bearing in mind that statistics don't prove anything. They prove something based on the model, not necessarily based on the reality. Like there are differences there. That's not to say that it's fair. Obviously, I agree with this. I think it's crazy. It's actually quite upsetting to read that. But yeah, it's important to understand that there are actual differences in terms of our level of education coming into university in the first place, which isn't actually tackled in this report, which I find quite interesting. They don't really touch on class much here, but they do touch on other things which are debatably more important. For example, I mentioned the first theme we're talking about now, isolation. That's something that I felt a lot as a black student in engineering. As a black student who studies engineering, this year, of course, we had the tragic passing of Alyssa Dukwe. Rest in peace to him. Shout out. That's probably not the correct way to say it. But present thoughts go out to his family and friends. But obviously, it is difficult. I've noticed it. Sometimes I go into lectures, or this year, I log into Zoom, and I'm just like, these guys don't know anything. And I've actually had, literally, on my very first day here, I think, on my interview back in 2015, one of the lecturers or whatever was like, oh, Bristol, like, welcome to the university, blah, 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 talking about it. He's like, this city is legendary because it's known for, like, 3 things, like cigarettes, something else, and slavery. And I'm just sitting here like, you just said what Bristol's legendary and known for, like, slave, like, I'm like, what? What the hell? And all the white kids around me are laughing, giggling, ha ha, I'm like, what the hell? I'd never felt, I mean, I wasn't super uncomfortable because I kind of knew what I was getting into when I applied. It's like, you know what, it's a pretty white city. It actually is kind of built a lot. I mean, Colston literally was a slavery thing, so it was kind of awkward. But it's like, that's not like a one-off thing. The fact that they felt comfortable to say that, and the fact that the students felt comfortable laughing at that, like, kind of shows an attitudinal problem. Where I'm like the only black guy in the room, I just felt not uncomfortable again, but it's like what the hell? Why? Like, allow it. And these sort of things where you kind of looking around, you don't see who's there, that you don't really know who to turn to. From a mental health perspective, it's like you're always in a place where you have to kind of chill. Like, there was one time where I referenced, someone said something that was like borderline racist or ignorant, and I kind of called it out. And then someone asked me a question like, oh, what about this? And I'm like, mate, just because I called out this one thing, I'm not the voice of black people. So I'm not like super woke. I don't just know everything because I'm black. And I think people kind of assume that sometimes. It's like, oh, you're a person of colour, therefore let me ask you about, what can we do better in society? What can we do to accommodate this? How does this work? How does that work? It's like, I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I don't have any answers. And better yet, if you want my consultancy, you better start paying me, bro. I know how much them consultants make. I've applied for EY, PwC, KPMG, Deloitte. I'm aware of Bain and Company. Yeah, I know what's going on out there. Pay me, bro. Yeah. I'm not giving out free consulting. No. You know what? I should even stop this video right now. Giving out free consulting. It's crazy. But yeah, I don't like how, and I feel like a lot of other black students feel this way, and it's obviously referenced in the report as well. There are students who just they're kind of reluctant to speak out because they don't want to be kind of typecasted as this one person who's let's go to this person about those issues. When I was a course rep in my first year, it wasn't explicit. It was quite covert, I guess. But they would talk to students, there's a bit of an issue with like feedback around reports. How do we target this? And they asked the white student, and then suddenly it's like, so there's a bit of like a attainment gap. Jordan, what do you think about that? And I'm like, why are you asking me? Oh, okay, I'm the only black guy in the room. That makes a lot of sense. And again, I was never made to feel uncomfortable by that. I do feel like the staff, especially in engineering, are very like caring and genuine, but it's still annoying. I guess it's like a subtle thing they don't really appreciate unless you're a person of colour who's going through it. And it's like, especially when you're the only one there, and you have the lack of support for other BME students, because I mentioned counselling and the wellbeing service. There's not really any other coloured people around you can go to, especially not higher up in the ranks. Like, yeah, there are like other black students around, but there's not like black staff around, or like black counsellors around, black wellbeing advisors around that you can go to. So if you are feeling a certain way because of your race or the colour of your skin, it's like, who do I go to about this? And that can feel very isolating, especially because Bristol, in totality, I guess, is quite a diverse city. But where the university is and where most of the students live in the more affluent areas, as you can imagine, it's a lot more white, a lot more not discrimination, a lot more, what's the word? Not non-equal, I guess. It's not apartheid. That's crazy terminology. That's a bit of an extreme. But you know what I mean, where it's a bit more heavily concentrated in the affluent areas where you have more and more white people. And then when you go to the poorer parts of Bristol, that's where you see suddenly loads of black people. It's a lot more separated, I guess, segregated is what I was looking for. Similar to London, like I'm kind of used to that. I'm kind of used to like Kensington, Chelsea being like massive, nice apartments, and you have like Fulham, and rest in peace to everyone who lost lives in Grenfell Tower, which is literally in the borough of Kensington. So it goes to show how classism works within these communities. But yeah, it's a difficult one to deal with. Isolation is something that they've referenced like heavily throughout the course of this report, and even students during the diary phase, taking pictures, saying like, not a person of colour in sight. Just spotted another Sikh guy in Bristol. Big up, we in the struggle. We all in the struggle. Like, it's literally, you do very much feel it sometimes walking around campus. It's like, oh mate, I'm the only guy here. There was one time where I was into a lecture like wearing a tracksuit, sliders. My friend came in with me. He's another black guy with like a do-rag on. And just suddenly everyone's looking at us like, whoa, do you belong here? And no one said that. I don't think they actually believed it either. But it still feels, you feel a bit uncomfortable when you walk into a lecture and everyone's like staring at you. Granted, we were like 15 minutes late, so it's not necessarily a race thing. But I guess it's especially noticeable when, again, you're like the two of the only college students in the room, and suddenly it's like a whole ocean of white people, white faces staring at you, feeling a type of way. And I guess it's just sustained stare. It's like if someone's late, you kind of look around or whatever, they're late, you look back at the front. But these guys are kind of like staring at us like, whoa, moving their bags to the side. If their phone's at the table, now their phone's on, inside of the table. And there's a lot of things you just kind of notice, these sort of things that you notice that I think, like, I'm not intimidating, bro. I'm not intimidating. Maybe it was the do-rag that my friend had that was intimidating specifically, but yeah, it's strange. Again, I want to highlight that I've never been made to feel like especially uncomfortable. Maybe that is specifically for engineering. We can talk about the curriculum as well in a sec, but it's like there are, just because people don't necessarily get it, it's not. I've never really felt in danger or in trouble. I've never really felt uncomfortable per se. Again, that's not to say that that doesn't apply for all students. I do feel like we do have quite a diverse city. Maybe not the campus as much, but the city at least is quite diverse. And there are a lot of black spaces on campus. We do have, again, Bristol have put work in to fix this. Our BME network is doing quite well. ACS is quite prevalent, whatever. ASOC, Asian Society. We have a lot of cultural societies that are actually quite big. They do quite big events, and the people that are involved in them actually do really care about what they're doing. It's not like people. There are some societies where it's like, oh, I'm going to be the head of Econ Society because it's wowzers. People are like, no, I'm going to be on Econ Society because it's good for my CV. You don't really have that in the cultural societies. People are like, no, I'm going to be the ACS president so I can actually make sustained change and start this like location or whatever. People actually care about what they're doing, and that's meaningful, not just because of the actual events itself, but just knowing that there are people out there that have strong passions and interests like you that match the same. Again, I don't like how people always say, like, oh, like, yes, I like ACS, but it's not like, oh, all my friends are from ACS. Black people are different. We're not just all black. We are all black, but we're not like, it's not like I don't eat jollof rice the same way as some of my brothers do, And I don't like how people often associate us together because we're all in it together. Mostly it's the white students that do it, to be fair. It's like, oh, you must know this and that and that. Like, no, just because he's black, I don't know him. But it's like, you do still appreciate people that have, again, from a similar background, that can understand what you're coming from, that can joke together with you, that, we all go to the same shops after, I'm not the biggest Turtle Bay fan. I don't like the whitewashing of some of these restaurants that are supposedly perpetuating our culture. But we go to like the Caribbean shop down the corner, you might see some guys there. And just knowing that these people exist is always a positive. So this report also mentions, code switching. They have to say it by name as well, having to adapt. For people that don't already know, code switching is, I guess there are several different interpretations of it, but fundamentally it's like having to adapt. You're having to speak a certain way, dress a certain way as a black person to appease or to fit in with a group of predominantly white people. It's not necessarily the case where it has to be black and white. I appreciate code switching or like, I guess, adapting occurs everywhere you go in any capacity, but it's especially prevalent again within our societies because it's like the people in power just happen to be, well, not happen to be, obviously the classism exists, but it's like you're trying to appease all these white men, and it's like I don't even wear sliders and tracksuits to campus anymore. Like, I bought these jeans. These are from Uniqlo. Shout out to Uniqlo. These are basically like, I guess to women, they're like jeggings. They're like tracksuit jeans. That's what I call them. They have like straps, not straps. What's this called? What are these called? Strings, tie thingies. It's like they're very comfortable jeans basically. And this is like a substitute to me. I just go out. Basically, I feel like I'm in a tracksuit and a hoodie. But I don't like looking different because you're often made to feel like you look different. Again, I guess maybe I said didn't feel uncomfortable. I guess that does count as being uncomfortable, having to do things differently. I started like talking slower, using longer words to fit into certain groups, because these underrepresented groups within our university is like, again, kind of going back to what I was talking about before, the whole isolation topic, and again, it's referenced in this report, but it's like, if you speak out, you're often assumed to be like, oh, so you know all of this now. It's like, no, I don't know what's going on. And I'm just talking about me. I don't speak on behalf of all black men in Bristol. I speak on behalf of Jordan. But being underrepresented and then having to, if you show too much of yourself out there, suddenly, again, people put all this extra pressure on you, all this extra responsibility. You're treated as like a representative of your race. You're kind of reduced. Like, someone had a go at me once. I was saying that there's a difference between like racism and ignorance, and like a certain comment I didn't deem to be racist. Like, for example, someone would ask you like, oh, whereabouts are you from in Africa or something? I'm like, I was born here. That's a dumb question. But I don't think a person's racist for asking that. I think that's an ignorant take. I think that's very stupid. You should kind of think, maybe just ask like, where are you from? Or ask yourself, why are you asking this question in the first place? Why does it matter? You're not going to go to like Bob and be like, oh, Bob, whereabouts in London are you from? It's like, he's just your friend Bob. You don't need to know more questions. And that's a different conversation for another day, but it's like, I think I was discussing that with a friend, it was like me, two coloured people, and then, two ethnic guys, and I think a white girl was there, and then this white girl was like, hey, like, you can't say that. What do you mean I can't say that? So, oh no, that's a very bad thing to say, people can't ask you that, da 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 da. And I appreciated that from like an ally perspective. Like, it was nice to hear, a white person kind of sticking up for us, I guess, like the wider us. But you're literally looking at me saying, nah, your experiences are incorrect because, you know, the status quo says this, that this is what racism is, and you're disagreeing with that, so you're wrong. And that's not what she said, but in a nutshell, it's kind of how it came across. And I'm like, why are you're kind of reducing me to my experience here? And it's something that people, you know, it's referenced in the report as well. Students are saying that, again, if you're a college student, if you're in a certain, you can't be completely yourself because people will like ask you about your culture, and they start addressing these like microaggressions. Like, oh, you should be good at basketball, right? Or you're good at this, right? Or some of the East Asian students, oh, you must be really good at maths and numbers. But it's like you're kind of reduced to like, oh, you're a black person, you know, you experience this, therefore everything that I've read online about what you feel must be true. And if you disagree with that, then you know, you're too black for my agenda. I guess is kind of what was going through her head. And it's like, don't do that. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that objectively asking where someone's from isn't racist. I'm just saying that for me, I don't interpret that as like an attack. I might interpret that differently because I don't see, like, I just think you're stupid. If you come to me and say, whereabouts in Africa are you from? I'm just going to call you an idiot. I'm not going to call you racist. I'm going to call you an idiot. But just, again, this white girl's like, oh, you can't say that. What do you mean? Like, I can say what I want. And again, that in itself, you know, in her attempts of trying to, you know, appease us, you know, trying to be an ally, she's outwardly, you know, not discriminating against me, I guess, but like trying to denounce or like reduce my experience as an individual, and, you know, assuming that the entire, almost as if all black people are the same, almost as if all colored people have to experience the same things, or they're just not. You know, you're not the right type or something. I don't know. I'm not the most articulate, as you can tell, but it is very interesting how people very much reduce you to your experiences, and how it's like you can't think or say or be a certain way because that, you know, that breaks the status quo, and it's like you have to be like how we think you are, and that's it. You know, I guess I'm fortunate to some extent that I'm the type of black guy that people tend to like on campus, but it's still especially annoying, again, where it's like you shouldn't have to be different to fit in. I mean, you should to some extent. Like, obviously, you fitting in, you know, adapting isn't unique. It's something. It's relevant. You know, for example, if you're working, you're going to want to be professional. No one's going to be, oh, I don't want to be. I want to be able to say swear words at work. You know, no one's going to complain and say something like that. You do have to fit in to some extent, but it's like you shouldn't have to let go of your whole identity in order to feel valued. Like, you got into Bristol, you got into Cambridge, Oxford, wherever you got into, because, you know, you got the grades, you deserve to be there, you belong there. And you shouldn't be made to feel like you don't belong there because, I don't know, you're darker than what this guy likes. It's very stupid, very ignorant. And again, allow reducing me to that. I can say what I want to say. You can disagree or agree. You know, take that down below to the comments if you want to, but that's, yeah, I'm going to do me as long as you do you, whatever, it's calm. And yeah, the final part of this report is, you know, the microaggressions. I'm not really going to go into it in too much depth because I feel like most people watching this kind of know what microaggressions are. It's essentially like, if you're, you know, I've heard like Chinese students, for example, someone says, oh, you must be really good at maths, so you're Chinese. Like, it's all these things that aren't explicitly discriminatory or racist per se, but it's obviously based on a stereotype towards like a certain race or demographic. And these microaggressions are, I don't care personally. If someone says, oh, you have really nice hair, it's like, whatever, and like, okay, cool. But then it's like, there are people, like, I've never had an experience where someone tried to touch my hair, and lucky for them. Because if I'm walking on the street and I feel tugging on my hair, like, I don't know what's going to happen next. I can't make any promises that you'll be okay after that. Because that's just blatant. It's not literally an attack. It's not like you're attacking me, but personal space, man. Like, I appreciate more power to the guys who have like had people touch their hair randomly and not reacted to it, because I don't know, muscle memory. I used to do karate as a kid. I'm just turning around and I'm just lashing, you know. Like, I used to do karate as a kid, so I'm just turning around and whoa, you know what I mean? I'm lashing. I'm not taking a second to think, oh, who's touching my hair? It's like, look, someone's touching me. Let's figure this out afterwards. But it is a problem, and I appreciate that's a problem. But these microaggressions, I think the problem that this report highlights more than the microaggressions itself is the holes that it shows in the system. You know, how do you report this? A lot of students, according to this report, you know, they talk about feelings of like, I don't know, because you don't really understand how the punishment system works. You don't really want to get someone in loads of trouble for doing something very minor. Like, you've seen in the news, people that lose their jobs and stuff for racist attacks or whatever. Some of them actually are outright racist. Let me not quote it. But, you know, some of these things, it's like, do I really want to cost someone their job just for saying like, what part of Africa are you from? Again, because it's ignorant. But it's like, how does the system actually work? How do you actually report this? what are the consequences of reporting these problems? Will they actually be taken into consideration, or are you going to be told, like I was, that you're overreacting or something? And how much of it is too much? Like, at what point do you just like go to the media or something? Like, it's very difficult. I think that's a structural issue where we don't really understand how things work, and that's not even our faults. I feel like most students don't know how these things work, because at university, at least in my experience, they never really highlighted it. You know, there was never like an email start of the year like, oh, if you go through this, this is what you should do. Again, I mentioned at the start of the video that they have been making improvements. It has increasingly been getting better here. To be honest, I still don't really know how it works, but I appreciate that there probably is an email in my mailbox somewhere that if I were to go through something, I could find that email and figure it out. But that's not really the point. You know, the point is that it should be, you know, set in stone, laid out from day one. Everyone knows, look, if you do this, this is the punishment. If you do this, if this happens to you, go to these people. You know, the exact ruling on this is whatever. Like, when it comes to exams and results and deadlines, there's very, very explicit rules. If you're late by one day, you're capped at 40% or whatever. But when it comes to like racial attacks, it's like, oh, you know, just report behavioural issues. Like, what the hell is behavioural issues? Like, actually highlight it. And again, I think they must have done it by now, because I've mentioned that the university has improved a lot, but I'm still not quite aware of that. So that's something to be wary of. But yeah, just make sure, I guess you yourself, as an individual, as a person of colour, if you're watching this video, it's more important that you understand what you can do versus, you know, the university or any institution having told you it. Yes, we will appreciate that. We'd like to just know things, just be told things, but, you know, don't leave it in their hands. You know, make sure that you're in complete power, you know, complete control at any given point. Because if things do happen, you want to be able to sort it out on your own, instead of being like having to rush around last minute and figure things out, or not know what's going on and have no one to turn to. Because if you're going through something negative and you don't know what's going on, that can be very stressful. It's much better off. You're much better off just understanding it. It's not fair. I get it. You shouldn't have to figure things out on your own to be able to feel comfortable going to any university or any institution. But it's like that's the game. The sad thing is that's the game. So, you know, figure it out. Figure it out. I've tried figuring it out. It's not easy, but I guess what I've taken on board is that it's not always. Once upon a time, it was fair to say like I'm the only black person in the room, so I felt bad. But now it's like, if I'm the only black person in the room, I'm gonna be the loudest guy, and you're gonna know I'm there, bro. I want you to know where I am. When I'm talking on YouTube, like, I want you to know who I am, where I am. I've spoken to a lot of students in Bristol. You know who I am. You see me around. Because again, if there's so few of us, let's make the effort. We shouldn't have to. Again, I appreciate that. But for the guys who have the energy and the time to do it, let's make the effort. Let's make ourselves known. Let's make it so the next generation of students coming through here don't feel like they're alone. Maybe there's, even if it's just me, if I'm the only black guy you know in Bristol, at least you know there's one other person. So I'm going to try and be as loud as I can be. And I want to challenge other people to be as loud as they can be. And yeah, for the basis of the report, as far as like, the problems are concerned, the things that they addressed, that's essentially it. You know, they broke it mostly down into isolation, you know, the whole code switching idea, and microaggressions are kind of the key themes. But yeah, let's go on to like some of the recommendations and then some other stuff and some updates. So after a clothes change, after some period of time, I finished reading to be fair, I'd already read the report, but I want us to go back over it and try and understand exactly like what people were going through, and also try and like list some actual updates. Because I know I mentioned throughout the video, like, you know, things have changed, etc., etc. But what's actually changed? What can I actually talk about? So I wanted to kind of go down the report one last time and then kind of break down, you know, to talk more about the specifics of what's actually gone on. So finishing off where we were last time, let's talk about some of the recommendations the report mentioned, and that then we'll go into like the actual updates. So the report mentioned, you know, review and update the curriculum, you know, during uni and using future events. Oh yeah, future events. Okay, yeah. My notes. I need to get better at writing notes. But basically, it's like update the curriculum. So my initial thought when I read that was, what does that mean? In engineering, it's kind of like it doesn't really matter if you're black, white, you know, whatever. It doesn't matter who you are, but male, female. You know, F equals MA. That's kind of just it. You know, things in engineering just are how they are. And I've never really interpreted much room for, you know, race dynamics or equality. I gave it some thought. Obviously, again, I've reread the report and now I have better ideas. But that's one of the recommendations. I understand it when it comes to, I guess, more reading-focused topics. When you're talking about, for example, history, if you're constantly being fed, you know, this whole whitewashing elements, and when you're reading things about your own culture, but in your eyes, it's like, you know, slavery is obviously a bad thing as an ethnic minority, as a black person. But then you see like reports written by white men who talk about, you know, the economic benefits and how the UK, you know, thrived under slave income and stuff like that. Like obviously that's a bit damaging to your mental when you're literally like, this is literally, you know, my parents complaining about this, me myself, I'm still experiencing negative, you know, adverse effects from these you know, from colonialism, from slavery, from all these different, you know, horrifying parts of our history, but they're always kind of being put in the limelight, like, oh yeah, you know, economic benefits of slavery, or, you know, these reports written at the hand of white people kind of explaining our experiences from their perspective. I can understand how that would be crazy, especially if you do, again, like a more of a reading focused unit. In engineering, in STEM, I think what people don't notice is that a lot of these technological advancements have kind of been, I mean, objectively, the truth is it's been pretty much done by the white man. But where those problems kind of come from is that a lot of these things, for example, cameras are a big one, is that they've been fine-tuned. When you think about computational photography, they've all been fine-tuned for the white man. I've had several instances in my you know, 23 years on this planet where I've been someone's taking a picture of me, and all my like white friends, you know, Caucasian friends, all my lighter skinned friends. To be fair, I'm relatively light, but you know, they all look like perfectly fine how they normally look. But when I look at my face, it's like really noisy, it's like saturated, the colours are off. Or my, you know, dark skinned friends, you know, colours completely off. You just can't see their face, and it's like, why is that? I think for a long time you didn't really realise that these cameras have been made. I mean, cameras aren't racist. Obviously, that's not what I'm trying to say. But the software, the hardware, you know, the way these chips work, and the, you know, the mirrors and stuff that work, and cameras, and all these different things are all just designed to be a certain way. When you go into a shop, I know I don't buy makeup, but I know that girls, when you buy like nude dresses or like nude makeup, it's always like nude, you know, white nude. You don't have like a black nude makeup. Maybe nowadays with like Fenty and, you know, a lot of these brands are a bit more aware of that. Maybe that's different. But at least when I was growing up, you know, back when I had a girlfriend, I've gone shopping, I'm like, this isn't nude, this is white. And it's like, oh yeah, okay, so for them guys it's nude, yeah, I get it. And there's always been these like small things, even though yes, clothing technically isn't engineering, but you know, when you think about chemistry, you know, the actual making the you know, the makeup, that's a STEM thing, it's a science thing. I don't know what chemicals goes into that, but that's obviously, you know, science related. And there are several things that aren't necessarily based on like, you know, explicit racism per se, but it's like, if the people making these things are of a certain demographic, obviously they're going to tailor those products to their kind, to their type, to themselves, because that's what they're making it for. They're not making it for us. So that's a different perspective to take. And anyone else that is from a STEM background that thought like me, like, there's not really much room for equality here. There very much is. I think tech is a big one. I think makeup and beauty and stuff is a big one. Obviously not for me, but for some people out there, it's very, very important. Even like medicine, when you Google search like what a rash looks like, you don't really see a rash on black skin. I can imagine there are a lot of medical students, I think it was mentioned in a report as well, where, you know, someone was like highlighting like a rash or like some medical complication, and it's like they're only really showing it for white skin. And I have a story as one of my friends who, like, or as far as I know, I don't know if it's true, but she said, like, you know, she spoke to the lecturer and said, excuse me, like, how does this look on black skin? And the lecturer just straight up said, I've got no idea. And to me, it's like, what do you mean you have no idea? Like, you're literally teaching these kids medicine. You're a medicine teacher, medical professor, whatever, and you only know half of what you're qualified to supposedly know. So, oh yeah, I can help those patients. Though you guys, I've got no idea. If you're black, I don't know how it's supposed to look for you. Just, you know, just deal with it on your own. I think that's crazy. I think that's actually criminal in many ways. Criminal negligence, you could call it. Like, you literally only cater for half of the, you know, your remit. So yeah, that's interesting, and I definitely think there's a lot of room. There's a massive scope where they can, you know, decolonize, you know, help equate, I don't know, like, make the curriculum more accessible, and not just the curriculum itself, you know, why you're there, what you're learning, but more importantly, like, what you're taking away for your future careers. You know, what can you actually take away from that, and how can you apply those teachings to yourself, you know, to your patients of color, you know, to make cameras more accessible to color people. And there's things like that in the future that are very, very important. That, again, we talk about like systemic racism. If you're being educated in a certain way, that's part of the system, right? So trying to interpret that as like a small step to the bigger picture versus like, what does it have to do with my degree? Like, there are several different things that go into it, not just now but in the future as you grow up and into your own careers. Other recommendations were like D&I training, diversity and inclusion training. I don't really like that. I feel like most of these training things is just complete nonsense. Mental health training, what's it called? Subconscious bias training. Like, a lot of this stuff doesn't actually do anything. In my opinion, there's a lot of data and statistics out there to prove this. Maybe, you know, I should try while I'm editing this to like put in some stats on the screen here. If you know, yeah, future Jordan, definitely do that. But there's a lot of statistics out there that prove that these training sessions don't really help. Some of them can help, like raise awareness to certain points, but it's like there's a reason why unconscious bias is called unconscious bias, is because it's unconscious. You can't just think about things different. I mean, you can change your behaviors in some extent, but there's no like 2 hour session that's going to make you think differently about. I remember doing a subconscious training, subconscious, unconscious, whatever it's called, but you know, a specific bias training, right? And it was literally just a whole thing. It was like a 2 hour presentation about just Asians, and it's like, oh, you know, when you think about terrorists, you think of this, but don't think of this, and then it just literally kept saying, highlighting the word terrorist and then showing a picture of an Asian person. Like, I know how dumb that is, and I actually think that training was just like very, very bad, because all you're kind of doing is showing my head, you know, as I said, the word terrorist, and then showing me a picture of like a South Asian person. That's not meaningful at all. I always see, obviously, I mean, obviously to me, hopefully you guys can appreciate this as well. I'm not, like, I'm not racist. I feel like such a bum. Like, of course you can say that, blah, blah, blah. Please believe me when I say this. I'm not racist. I appreciate that terrorism isn't necessarily something that matters. It doesn't matter what race you are. Terrorist is a type of thing, there are several different people with several different demographics that appease that, you know, that can come under the umbrella of what a terrorist is. I genuinely think, let's say like 1% of the human population is a bad person. That means 1% of black people, 1% of Asian people, 1% of white people, 1% of every single demographic. That's the way I see it. I think people only ever highlight certain groups, but fundamentally, some percentage of humans are trash, and that encompasses every, you know, 1% of men and 1% of women. It's equal. We just don't really realize that because the media only pays attention to certain things. But yeah, my point is that D&I training, training in general, it doesn't really seem very good. I mean, if you think about it, this degree is like training for a job, and how many people get their degrees and work in that sector? Or if you ask most of these guys who work, like, was your degree actually helpful in getting you here? Most of them will probably say no. So just bear that in mind. Training in general, in my opinion, is pretty useless. Practice is important, but training is useless. I can't wait to get hate from that one. They also mentioned that clarity on the complaints procedures, things like that. I mentioned that myself as well, so they have put a lot of effort into that. I don't know the exact procedures, but I know for a fact if I were to go through my emails, I would find a lot of clarity on that. BME, home, school, and faculty reps, more on the ground support, sorry, and institutional commitment, i.e. So they mentioned joining the ECU race charter. I don't actually know if Bristol's done that, but that's a very important thing. I don't know how important it is. I know what to say it's very important, but it's like joining the race charter. It's like it's a regulated body that makes sure that you're actually following through with your claims. But the only problem is, again, all of these charters, all these institutions, they're all run by the same people. So how thorough is it actually? Again, I don't know if we have actually joined that. That's an actual actionable thing that I can check now in real time, to be fair. And the other one is like school reps. I don't think we have had that. I understand the importance of it. I think having reps, representatives, like student representatives, is a great way to show that you actually care, even though it's not explicit. Like, I remember in my secondary school we had like head boy, head girl. They were literally just figureheads, didn't actually do anything. You can put it on your CV, that's cool, but they had no power whatsoever. And I do think a lot of these representatives also don't really have any power. It's kind of just like a position that the uni have made up. But it's not like, and when I say they don't have any power, I don't mean that in a sense that they should have, that they can't be like hiring or firing or anything. But it's like, you very much just are a course rep by title. You do get to go to meetings, you know, I've done it in the past. You get to go to meetings, you're the point of contact, so like students can talk to you, who can mediate between them and the faculty and staff and stuff. So you do have responsibilities, but it's like, I don't actually know what a BME rep would be liable for, per se. Again, that's something that's not, you know, that's way above me. Someone else got to figure that problem out. But I haven't noticed that. I don't think that's a thing that's happened. But what we have had, you know, going on to the updates part of this, like what's actually changed. I'm a part of a lot of these things, so I can actually talk about that from my perspective as well. But I've noticed recently, you know, we've had the BME Alumni Mentoring Program, which is a great platform. Shout out to Robbie who runs that. We literally, I feel like it's a common thing where people of colour, I mean, it's a classist thing, right? If your parents work in like retail and like bus and train drivers or whatever, you're not going to have the same access to like, you know, investment bankers or anything like that. And I think a lot of working class people and mostly, again, the ethnic minorities who fit this demographic, we don't really have industry connections. We don't really understand how things work. We don't know anyone who started their own business. So having an actual alumni network, alumni mentor network, where you actually speak to these people who actually have been working in tech, working in finance, started their own business, done this, done that, whatever. Like it's revolutionary in many ways because it's like you literally don't see those things until you see it, and you don't realize how far behind you were. It's like I remember when I went to my first interview, and literally up until like this year, I was going to interviews like a black tie, and then my mentor was like, "Mate, like, why are you always wearing a black tie everywhere? Like, it's not a funeral. Work, you got to be like red or blue. That's it. Like, how the hell was I supposed to know that? None of my parents work in an industry where they have to wear suits. I talked about bus. My dad's a bus driver. Mum works in retail. My uncle's a bus driver. Auntie works in like lost property basically in London. Like, I don't have any like professionals in my family that do like actual professional work. So I literally didn't know. And it literally took me until I was like 21, 22 years old for someone to say, look, stop wearing a black tie, you look like an idiot. You look out of place. And even then, it's like, that's such a small thing. Like a black tie is like for like a black tie event or for funerals. Work is like blue and red. Why? Like, where's the intuition? How am I supposed to just realize that, like, oh, this doesn't look right? Again, as I said, unless you know these things, you don't know them. Like, you don't know until you know. And having some sort of access into that is revolutionary. It changes a lot. And it's very, very important. And I think, I really hope more people in that position where you don't know these things, you don't have a mentor, definitely try and get one. Even if it's just like for the sake of asking them questions about like what's the right tie to wear, what haircut is suitable. You see people on these like Zoom calls. We had a big discussion about this as well within the black community. Like people like wearing like raggedy clothes and the tracksuits on Zoom call because they're at home, they're gonna get away with it. But with us, it's like, are we allowed to wear do-rags? Like, is that too unprofessional? Is that like too black for these people? And it's a genuine question. I think most people, the consensus is no, don't wear a do-rag. But at the same time, it's like, how come it's acceptable to wear like tracksuit and like a t-shirt on Zoom because you're in your house, you can do what you want, but then a do-rag is like perceived as too much. Why is that too much? And obviously I know why it's too much, but just think about that again for your own perspective. But yeah, having a mentor is important, especially, and just having someone to answer your questions I think is more important, irrespective of whether that's a mentor, like an uncle, a friend's mum or whatever. Just having someone you can ask these questions to, and in like with confidence as well, is valuable. We also have the Black Men and Women Talk BMWT network. I think they've actually gone national now, which is incredible. So shout out to who runs that. It is Yannick. I believe it's Yannick who runs that. I'll double check that. But shout out to Yannick either way. BMWT, phenomenal platform. It's literally just like literally black men talk and then black women talk, but then it's like black men, women talk. And you have these events where it's literally just a room full of guys who obviously you choose to come there in your own time. It's kind of like a what's it called? Alcohol awareness talk, whatever, like a AAA meeting, whatever. And it's just like guys sitting around like, oh hi, I'm Jordan, I'm black. That's not actually what it is, but I guess it's the same kind of format. Like you say, like, oh, I'm Jordan, I'm a second engineering mathematics student at Bristol, yada yada yada, and then you just get to talking. You just chat, talk about your experiences, talk about what's stressing you out, normal stuff, things that you'd think should already exist, but they didn't beforehand. And now they do. So it's nice to have that sort of platform. Also, of course, I mentioned Colston statue went down. We have this thing that I've actually applied for recently, the Bristol BME Success Advocates, Be More Empowered for Success Advocates is called. Shout out to Rubio for that. Rubio? Sorry if I butchered your name. They now have like 25, going on like 30 advocates. There's literally just students like myself, if I get the job, who, we go around and we collaborate kind of between students and staff. We offer kind of like what I was saying of like course reps and like faculty reps. I guess the BME Success Advocates kind of fill that role where we will talk to people, talk to other students, kind of liaise with the staff and act like a middleman. Also put on like events and also do loads of other stuff, research. I guess it's offer better liaison points, which is important because it means that there's now a way for black and ethnic minority students to talk to the seniors. In the past, it's all kind of, we have our problems, but that kind of stayed within us. Or maybe it went to like a faculty person or like a society president or something, but no one of like actual not absolute power, like of actual power. No like staff member, no like uni senior person. So this role, I guess, kind of fills that gap where now it's like we literally have a senior person to talk to, and then we act as like representatives of the wider communities. So that's pretty cool. Also, the BME attainment gap in Bristol. This whole report has addressed the attainment gap, and the attainment gap is literally that BME students attain lower grades than the non-BME students or the white students. And in Bristol, that was 7% when this report came out. It's currently 5, which is what, a 20% drop. So shout out again to Bristol for that. I think that as a sector, I think the attainment gap is like 20% or 18%. So literally, if you're black, Asian, ethnic minorities, you're 20% more likely to achieve a lower grade than a white person just because you're coloured, just because you're an ethnic minority, which is pretty crazy. Nationwide or sector-wide, again, that's like 20 to 18%, something like that. Bristol's 5%. So realistically, there shouldn't be any gap. It's not like, oh yeah, we're down 2 percentage points. It's like, you're still bad. It's just, it should be 0 in an ideal world. But yeah, the gap's coming down. That's, I guess, what's most important. Like, we are getting there. And yeah, I think they highlight, it's like 3 different steps. Like, first you have to review the system, and that comes from having the schools and the faculties, like getting the data, analysing the data, figuring out what you're going to do. You have the whole, like, I talked about, mentoring. I talked about black men and women talk, like a well-being kind of society. That's kind of like addressing the whole point of belonging and isolation. Now you have a mentor. Now you don't feel as alone because you have a mentor. You have Black Men Talk events every other week. You don't feel as alone or isolated because you have these, these actual laid out events and spaces for us. And then yeah, events is the other thing as well. Like at the start of every year, October is like Black History Month. So we almost always have, well, at least for as long as I've been studying here, Black History Month events throughout the whole course of the month. We have a lot more focus on wider religious festivals, Eid, Ramadan. Wow, they've all gone out of my head now, literally everything. And I said that I wasn't racist earlier, I mean that. I meant that, I'm sorry. My head's just gone empty. But we are taking a lot more of a focus now on that. I do think some of that, let me not give too much credit to the uni on that one, because I do feel like these societies have just gotten better. However, you could argue maybe the uni giving them more funding now, which gives the uni some credit. But my fundamental point is that I think the students deserve way more credit on that than they get, because it is fundamentally up to us to like set these events up a lot of the time, to go to the events, of course, to represent, to pull up, show up. So shout out to the Bristol students for not even just the BME students, like all Bristol students. Shout out to that for getting these events up and running and showing up. That's very important. But there's also like school and SU involvement, having like BME engineering meetups or whatever. So it is a lot more inclusive. Things are getting better, and fundamentally, they're addressing the attainment gap point that is coming down. I can't speak specifically on well-being or counselling or anything like that yet, or campus issues yet, because the last year and a half has been lockdown isolation. So I haven't actually been on campus or seen anyone to know the actual, what's actually going on in person. However, I will admit, again, I talked about this a couple of times, I've got a lot of emails. And I haven't been reading all those emails, but I appreciate that I do have the emails and the information is readily available to me should I need it. So things are looking good, I'll be honest. I feel like anytime people ask me in the comments or DMs, whatever, like what's Bristol like for a colour student, an ethnic minority, an international student, black student, etc., etc., I've always given my honest opinion. And my honest opinion, I maintain it, that Bristol's good. It's not perfect, it's not great, but then nowhere in the world is. If I had to like rank from, if I were to like make a 0 score, and this as the norm, as like, I guess like London would be my idea of what the norm is. Don't get me wrong, London is still racist as hell, but it's like that's the norm for me, London. If I was to compare the rest of the country on like a London scale, Bristol's getting like a 9, an 8, 9 out of 10. So it is pretty good, it's pretty good. Bristol's quite diverse, it's quite liberal as well, it's quite accepting, at least the wider city as well. I've never really had any issues here. I often feel like Bristol's very much like London. I always say this, it's like London but without the knife crime. Like I'd feel the type of way walking through parts of London at like 3 a.m, whereas I don't feel a way walking through Bristol late at night at all. But I still have the same city vibes. The only thing is Bristol has over London is that London still kind of has this, and I guess I benefit from being like proper West London, where it's like a 20-minute drive to like Virginia Waters, where I can go out into the relative country. But in Bristol, like country is like I might as well be in a country now, and I'm just like 20 minutes from the city. So you still have the nice balance of both. The air, it is still quite bad and polluted. Air pollution is still quite a real thing in Bristol, but at least you can appreciate, walk 20 minutes that way and things will smell a bit better. So shout out to Bristol for that. Genuinely, I do enjoy Bristol, the city. It's a vibrant place. People are nice. Diversity is okay. It's not great, but it's okay. That is sustained both in the city and on campus. Again, I want to highlight for the final time that this is my opinion. I'm not speaking about all black people. Even if I was, I'm black. I'm not South Asian or East Asian or Eastern European or Brazilian, South American. I belong to one demographic, so don't take what I say. First of all, don't take what I say further than me at all. And also, if you are going to like quote or like take any ideas from what I say, don't take that beyond the communities that I belong to. It's not like all ethnic minorities, because that's what I hate about the words BME and BAME. Black and Asian minority ethnics BAME, or black minority ethnics BME. It's like you're very much encompassing like most of the world into one thing. It's like you're either white or you're BME. Like that's not how it works. If you go to a Somali and say, "Yo, what's it like in Brazil?" Like they're not gonna give you an answer. And the same rules apply if you go to like a white person from Ireland and be like, "Yo, what's Poland like?" They're not gonna give you an answer. So I think it is important to be more appreciative of the nuances within what BME means. Don't just look at black man number 1 and black man number 2 and assume they're similar because they're both black. I very much, I go to ACS events a lot. Well, not anymore, to be fair, with lockdown and Zoom calls and stuff. But back in the day, I did. Back when my boy was the president, shout out to the squad. That was 2017-18, I believe, when I had peoples. And that, even as a black man, there were several times where I felt out of place. These guys are like proper Nigerian, Ghanaian, talking about jollof rice, this and the other. And I resemble closer to my dad's side. I feel like I feel more Caribbean on the ACS scale. I'm saying that I don't know what you're talking about, and I love all those guys, but I feel like it's cool for me to say that because I get it. I know what I'm talking about. They know what I'm talking about. But my point is that people that often just say, "Oh, BME, yeah, you guys are all the same, right? You're Afrobean or something." It's like, this is not. Please don't do that. Like, understand that not only are demographics different, like Africa and the Caribbean is different, and South America is different, and Asia is different. Not only are we from literal different continents, but with different people, literally different people. My experiences aren't the same as this person. We could both be from the same place. You could be my twin brother, and I'm still different to him. So don't compare experiences or perspectives or opinions. And yeah, let that be a lesson of, I don't know, life or something. Let that be a life lesson. This video's gone on for way too long now. I might even have to change out this again because I'm just sweating like a mofo. I think one final thing that I didn't mention, and it was mentioned in the report, so I feel like I should talk about it. I'm not going to go into it at length because this has really been like a ridiculously long video. Check it out, read the report on your own. But I do want to mention the report highlighted, BME students are they more or less career focused than non-BME students? How much are we burdened by like family and community relationships? I.e., the first in your families go there. Are you really concerned about personal development, or is it just like parental pressure, things like that? BME wider communities. People always highlight that. It's like, don't get me wrong. I also feel the burden of like being the first in my family to go to university. Well, within the first generation, I guess, because my cousin did go. I do feel the pressures of the wider community. Like, I feel like as a black man, I want to do more. I want to give back. I've joined different institutions. I've joined different platforms. There's one called Kwanda. Shout out to Kwanda. They do crazy good work, to be fair. It's literally like, it's hard to explain it, but it's a village. It's like the village mentality, but you join it and you pay like £3 a month or whatever, and you get to vote on like what they do. They often do projects like in Africa and the UK, around the world, and it's like you're part of this village. You have this like pot of money, and it just feels like a video game. Like gamifying charity is like the best thing ever. Gamification is the greatest thing in human history. But I love what they offer at Kwanda. Sorry, I don't know. I feel like I'm pronouncing everything wrong today, but I do feel the burdens again of having to. I feel like I guess it's like a survivorship bias where you feel responsible for other people who don't have what you have. But at the same time, it's like, I feel like people kind of overestimate that. It's like, but the reason why there's a BME attainment gap is because, you're the first in your family to go to university. It's not to do with racism. It's because you want to give back to your people. Black tax, community tax, whatever. And that's just an excuse. Don't get me wrong. People, myself included, I do feel there's pressures. But when people use that, obviously if there are other people in those situations saying like I feel the burden of having to do this, that's what holding me back, that's different because you're saying that. But when other people use it as like an excuse, like, no, there's no such thing as racism, it's just your community, do not buy into that. Because most students, if you ask them, and if you actually read this report as well, again, this is only for Bristol students, it shouldn't be taken as like a microcosm for the entire country, but it's not necessarily the case that all we care about is like our communities and personal development. A lot of us do want to get good grades. When I first came to Bristol, I was like, you know what, I'm going to get a first class degree. I still am. I'm still going to get a first class degree, just so you know that. But it's like, there are limiting factors here, and people need to understand that the whole family, first in family to go to university, it is a setback. It does make things harder, but don't use that as an excuse. Please don't. Because fundamentally, you're there now. It doesn't matter if your mum wasn't there 50 years ago. Like, you're there now. You can get what you got to get. And people that try and use that as like a disapproval kind of thing, to disprove that, the institution is wrong or that the system is wrong, that's so ignorant. Because at the end of the day, as I said, people, not all of us, very few of us will admit to those things being a hindrance on us. We admit that they exist, that, we do have family pressures, we do have community pressures, but it's not like that's why I'm doing bad. If anything, that's why I'm here. Like, if I didn't have to, if my parents were like well off, and I was, and then my community were thriving, and I lived in an area where there was like very little crime and everything was good, then why am I trying to better myself if everything's already good? If anything, coming from like a negative place, coming from a bad place, makes me want to work 10 times harder so I can get out of that and take them with me. But more importantly, I want to get out of that. Yes, I feel the pressure to bring everyone with me, but first I need to get out. It's not like I can't just take them with me and go nowhere. I have to get out first. So that's, if anything, it's a positive pressure. It's a positive stress. So bear that in mind. That's the one thing I want you to read into when you read this whole report. But that's it. Let me actually go this time. But yeah, thank you very much for listening for this 20 to 40 minute video. I hope you guys have taken something away from it. Now that I'm 23 now, so literally the rest of the content is coming out after this. No more quickies, no more short videos. We're on a value streak now. We're trying to provide value. So if there's anything you do want to hear me say, let me know down below in the comments, or like hit me up on Instagram, LinkedIn. That's it. Don't tweet me, but Instagram, LinkedIn, hit me up, or comments down below. We'll figure some things out. But that's all from now. That's all from today. Whatever. Thank you very much, and take it easy. Peace.